Okay, let me share my screen with you guys and let's proceed. Okay, so last class we taught we or I showed you guys how to make the hand and the base for this guy's little wrench weapon thing. So today I wanted to kind of show you guys a little bit more on how to start getting more of this guy refined. We've kind of just been blocking him out for the most part. All right, so we've got a decent block out going, and yeah, let us continue. All right, so there's a few issues that you can run into with characters, and I wanted to just address some of them. Right. Last class we talked about this kind of Pico thing, and with clothing items and things that exist in the real world, you always want to kind of draw a reference in the real world, right? So I found a peacoat that kind of is more realistic, right? And this is one of those things that will help you guys in the long run, right? Is to find actual reference that you can use to create what you're trying to create. So for this guy, right, we might want to augment that to match what the real one looks like. And once again, I think it's probably because this is AI generated that you might run into one of those issues. All right. So using the real jacket, you do see where the seams are, where the buttons are, where maybe even the jacket pockets are, and because of how the model is kind of posed, you can even see some of how the wrinkles would work on both sides of the arm. So it's always good to gather real world references for whatever you're sculpting, whatever you're making, just because it makes it easier for you. All right. So I'm going to grab this guy right here, pull it up a little bit more, right? And then go back to our draw. And our subtool here. And I'm going to hit him with a little bit of smooth. Just hit it with the smooth at the bottom there. All right. And then I can go in and BMV, that's the move tool. All right, maybe scale it down a little bit, and then kind of shape our shape it a little bit more, just because this guy isn't too like, it isn't very symmetrical. Right, I wanted to show you guys like, hey, you can start with the base of a cylinder. Let's to make this. Sorry. Remember, in your texture tab, right? You can dock your texture tab in here, and now you've got your image in here. All right, with our reference views, I can bring this guy kind of back down a little bit. I just reduced the opacity so you could see through it. And then I can use this to kind of move this guy into shape. Go BCT, that's our clay buildup. You can use it to kind of build up this side a little bit. Might want to increase the opacity a little bit more of my sculpt here. And right now we've got kind of some janky stuff going on, so what I might want to do is BMV, use this move tool again. I pull this guy back down. It's kind of got this interesting kind of shape, so I'm trying to match that as best I can, right? Just gonna try to match that best you can. You can see that, you know, this side is a little higher, the point is, than the other side. All right, he's probably got good use out of this bad boy, you know. I guess he's a part-time mechanic. You never know. So you want to kind of get things like that in there. Now I can just go into my geometry, right? Z remesher, and I'm going to do the same, and I'm just going to remesh it. Now what, like I said, that does is it reorients our mesh to get more of that in there. So now if I hit the divide, right, what I can do is BDS, whoops, you know, BDS, that's our Damien standard tool. I'm also going to turn our opacity back on to 100, just so you guys can see what's going on here. I'm going to divide this guy one time. Alright, so I've got my Damien standard tool here. Alright, and I can go in and use that to kind of crease these edges. And the reason it's really crunchy right now is because I don't have enough geometry in there. I don't have enough geo. So to get something like that, I would go into, just divide it one more time. Alright, just divide it one more time. And then we can, my intensity is a little high. Maybe even let's do half. Z remesh this bad boy. Alright. So now we've got something like that. And another thing you can do is you can go into your deformations and just hit it with just a little bit of polish. Right, and that'll clean up some more of it. All right. All right, and then I can do the same thing for this side as well. Just giving it some more of those, and then I can go B, P, right, get my polish brush out, and then polish this guy up a little bit. Go BCT again. Might want to reduce the intensity, right? Just reducing the intensity and right, using what I've already created. Let's turn on our lazy mouse. Shift to smooth. Right? I'm using what I've already kind of created as my guide, and then I'm using the rest to kind of just flatten it out. Right? You can see how that's kind of flattening it using that that standard brush kind of edge that I've already created. All right, looks like he's got kind of this like interesting kind of chip in there, so I can go BDS. So to kind of do that, I can cut, right? Cut in a little bit. Well, actually, let's do something like this. We can do chips a different way. I'm gonna imagine. I'm gonna do, because right now I need one right in the middle of it. I might increase my intensity just because I need to visualize this a little better. Up to 20. Let's go L for my lazy mouse. Increase that a little bit. Rotate. Alright, you guys can see what's going on there. And then boom. And then BCT, using that to flatten this again. Just flattening the inside to accentuate the sharpness that I just, that I created. And I'm holding down Alt to do the opposite, right? So regularly would pull out, I'm doing the opposite to kind of get that. And then I'm Shift to smooth it, right? Shift to smooth this back out. And then BDS. Maybe I want to bring this guy to a point. Shift, smooth that out. All right, you guys get the process at this point. All right, just shift, smooth a little bit. I might want to BMV. Okay. BMV, and then use that to move these guys to the same plane. So you always got to be rotating around your model, right? You can still do a little, maybe flatten this a little bit. BDS, that's your Damien standard brush, right? You're just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. All right, BH, I'm gonna do my high polish here. All right, and my high polish will kind of give me kind of like a, almost like a hard surface look to it. But first, let's go geometry. I'm gonna divide it. All right, and what I want to do now is use that high polish brush to kind of flatten some of these areas out, right? Give it that kind of look. All right, you guys can see what it's doing. It's kind of flattening it a little bit, polishing it at the same time. All right, it's taking all the flat edges that I've already created and using that to kind of do a flatten, do a polish at the same time. So it's more like a beaten metal kind of look. All right. Right, and when you do something like this and you're like, oh man, it looks a little too beat up, or it looks a little too warped or something, well then let me go BDS. I'm going to use this to kind of draw. Something like that. Right. And if you want, you can solo it, so you know, and then you can go BHP again, that's your high polish, and then that'll kind of flatten those back out. Right? Right. Might reduce the size here a little bit. Just kind of polishing this out. Right. It's one of those pieces that it's like between hard surface and organic. And then I can go down back into my deformation, and then I can maybe do polish, crease that. I'm just going to do a polish. And then BDS. And let's turn on my lazy mouse. Let's go stroke, lazy mouse, and then I'm going to increase the smoothing on that. Let's also increase the radius, increase the smoothing a little bit, and then, right. Whoops. Now I can go back in here, give this guy kind of a more of a sharp look to it, right? Go B, B, C, T, maybe. Okay, B, H, P, let's do the polish again. I'm just gonna, so I wanna just flatten some of these pieces out. All right, just flatten it to a decent point. Using this to kind of polish it out. Polishing it out. Polish. Good, nice polish. If you increase the size, it'll give you way more. Sometimes more than you bargained for. I'll use it to even. Go BMV, maybe tuck this guy in a little bit. smooth. BHP. Polish this guy up a little bit. You don't want it to look too gummy, right? Since it's a hard surface piece. And I'm just smoothing it back out. Right. Let's turn off solo. Right. Use a BMV. Maybe try to match this silhouette a little better. Right. Boom. And then use this to build this up. Right. Just trying to match that silhouette. That's a little bit better. Alright. So we got that guy kind of blocked in a little bit too. So now we can start to move around again, right? And this would be like a decent like first pass of the character that you would do. The only other thing I'm missing is he's got an arm on his shoulder. So I'm going to take this control, right? Control, grab that guy, and then I'm going to use this guy as let's go, where's the subtool panel? And I'm going to split. Alright. So now, now this guy's on its own thing, this guy's on its own thing. And I'm going to go to my transform. No, not my transform. I'm going to go to my Z plugins. Let's go to subtool master. And then I'm going to mirror this. Actually, let me delete this guy. Hit OK. Oops. Transform. Oh, Z plugin. Subtool master. Hit mirror. Okay. Okay. It's actually. There we go. Make sure I don't have to. I don't have to. Now let's go to Z plugin, subtool master. I'm gonna append it as a new subtool. Hit OK. That's just fine. And then now I've got my other piece here. I'm gonna turn this guy on, and then I can use this guy as my piece. Move it onto his shoulder. scale it down a little bit. And this is supposed to be kind of like a bony, it's a similar thing that's going on, so we can leave that on the shoulder. Move this guy back a little bit. Because whenever I create it, I'm going to want the jacket and stuff to kind of affect, you know, because you can see it's kind of pulling at the bottom here. So it's like he's got like a claw on him or something trying to grab him, or somebody tried to grab him and he broke away. So. Okay. Rotate a little bit. I might scale it down a little bit. Move this guy in place a little bit more. And all I'm doing is clicking Alt to kind of reposition the pivot points and stuff for the X, Y, and Z axis. I'm just trying to move, trying to match what I see in the reference a little bit more. And then you can use your move tool to start to kind of move all these pieces back in place. So I don't see the thumb there, so I might just get this guy kind of out of the way. I'm increasing this brush size just so that I can get more pull, more push on what's going on. Right. Use the move tool to rotate it just slightly out a little bit like that. There we go. It feels like it's digging into them a little bit better. All right. So I'm trying to think of what else needs to kind of be roughed in a little bit. Everything else feels kind of G2G, because then now the next step would be to start refining the sculpt just a little bit more. So let me see. I think I might have a comment. Let me see what the comment is. Oh, no comment. All right. Keep going. All right, so now I want to go back to our face. All right, go BDS. I'm gonna go to my geometry. Let's go to my polyframe to see what kind of geometry level I'm working with. So in video games today, like something like this, let's see, it might pass, right? Because the idea would be you'd get something super low like this, and then you would bake your high resolution mesh onto something like this. All right, I'm gonna divide that twice, and now what I can do is I want to start kind of detailing this guy out. Actually, let's go back down a little bit, but before I do that, I do want to integrate BCT. Let's integrate the teeth back in a little bit. I'm gonna turn off my symmetry because it's not really necessary at this moment. Turn off my lazy mouse using the keyboard shortcut L, and then I'm sculpting back up to increase my intensity a little bit. Just sculpting back up, sculpting these back up. Maybe let me go one up in subdivision levels so you guys can see. There you go. I want the gums to kind of build around it. Let me go up here. Go to my refs. All right. Shift. Now this is when you get to zoom in a little bit more, start to kind of have a little fun detailing these guys out. All right. I don't want these teeth to look like they're just floating, right? So I'm building the gum structure around it, building more gum structure around it a little bit more, just to feel like it's more part of the tooth. All right. Then you can do Alt, maybe even go Damien standard brush a little bit, right, to kind of draw, right, to make those go in a little bit more. Right now we want to make this guy look a little more ghoulish, so, and I don't rush to go into higher subdivisions, just because if you rush to get into those higher subdivisions, you can really lose a lot of this ability to detail it really well. All right? Because you won't be able to move as many polygons when you've got a higher subdivision. So it's always a little better to stay a little lower, right? Work with what you got, BCT. I need to build this guy up quite a bit. It looks like this tooth doesn't want to play ball. All right. Shift to smooth that back down. And worst comes to worst, I can grab just this guy and then move him in a little bit. Then back to draw. Smooth that out a little bit. I'll get back to these guys. And BCT. There we go, a little bit. Alright, let's go back here a little bit, show this guy a little love. if I go one more up, you can see what it kind of looks like. Right, and then just keep going the same thing you're doing. Just keep building up. Maybe smooth it out a little bit. BDS, Damien Standard, and then use that to draw. Define those a little bit more. Right? Let these kind of go through. Just to kind of smooth it out. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the eyes, right, and then start to use some of this stuff to help me determine what's going on in here. Right, and he's got some cross hatching here. I can show you guys how to, if I wanted to, so I'll go BCB, actually BST, that's the standard brush. And in the standard brush, I'm going to use drag select, and I'm going to change the alpha to something, maybe either this alpha 22, maybe this alpha 60. And what drag select does is it allows you to kind of drag out, and I showed you guys this a little bit, right? And this can maybe even help you, right, whenever you're doing something like this, kind of get a good starter. Then you'd go back to your BCT, which is your clay build up tool, right? And then you'll use that to kind of build up more, right? So let's go X, and then I'll use this as the BST, and then I'll use the drag select to kind of start helping us. This might be a little quicker. Alright. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Alright. Reduce the intensity of your clay tubes, right? You're just using it to accentuate, right? With something like this, you want to kind of round out those corners a little bit, right? BDS. Right, just trying to give him more. Right, there you go. BCT. All right, another thing you can do if you're trying to make a hole. BST. I'm gonna do the mask pen. All right, let's do a small mask, and then if you invert the mask, you can either use the move to move that guy up, right? And then now you've got the hole in there, alright, and then control, then shift to kind of smooth it back out, or you can use the move tool. And now I can BST or BCT just to smooth this guy back out. BDS, once again, it's our Damien standard tool, and I want to now kind of attack these upper parts of his eyes, maybe give him go BCT, and then build this up a little bit, build this up. BDS, that's the Damien standard. All right. Okay, so there's this cool feature. So I just made that stroke. If I hit 1 on my keyboard, it'll keep repeating that action. Alright. Then I can do another one right here. It's a smaller one. BCT. I'm just using that to go back over some of these guys that I've created over here. And I can then, I can still smooth it out a little bit. BDS, using my Damien standard tool to really start to accentuate some of these. All right, and he's got a lot more wrinkles. Right. These have a lot more intense ones, so I might go back here using this guy. Maybe increase the intensity a little bit. Right, Alt. That's a little too much. Reduce this a little bit. Go BCT. BDS. Just trying to make him as gruesome as possible. And maybe I can go here. I'm just drawing these worry lines a little better. BCT, right? You guys can see like it's pretty much that same process over and over again until you get something decent, right? The problem that you guys might run into is if you're rushing, if you're trying to just, if you're trying to make your way through it as fast as possible, right? It's usually a recipe for disaster most of the time, So you want to give yourself the time to really, because it's layer by layer. You're building up layer by layer. You're building up information. You're pushing. You're pulling. You're looking at your reference. You're making sure what you're doing is right. At the very least, in the early stages of your career, in the early stages of learning. Right, because learning comes from studying, right? You want to look at the reference, look at your model, see, okay, this looks right, this looks off, right? And those are the kind of things that will help you guys just create better models now, right? When you maybe get into the later stages of your career of knowing how to do, knowing how to do this stuff naturally and really, really well, then yeah, you can start to wing that stuff. You can go through it because you've built that muscle memory up a little bit more, but if you haven't built it up, well, you gotta start somewhere. You gotta pay attention, look at the model, look at what you're working with, reduce this a little bit. Alright, so now I can, and then maybe even reduce this intensity a little bit more. Right, and the reason that, you know, you want to really kind of go through, flesh out your base mesh is because now, in reality, well, I don't have to go past where this collar is, right? I don't have to go past that, and I know where to put my information. That's really why you want to start building your base mesh first, because it tells you where you need to focus your attention at. All right. So these are the kind of things that will help you guys in the future. Like, all right, I built my base mesh now, because if I was in a studio, right, like, and I'm working on, they say, hey, you got to work up this character. And I go, all right, cool, let me work it up. And then I go and I do the arms and I do the hands and I do all of this. And then I put a jacket on it, right? I've taken a day to put a jacket on a character that I spent an entire day working on his arms, right? I worked on all of this parts. I muscled it out. I made it look anatomically perfect, when in reality, a jacket's going to be covering it, right? You're not going to see it. In reality, when you're doing the final version, you're probably going to eliminate all of this. You're probably going to, at the very least, cut it out. So all you're seeing is jacket, skin right here. They're going to cut off the inside, then hand, right? So these are the kind of lessons that you guys need to start thinking about. It's like, okay, my character has this, this, and this on. What am I gonna, what's the audience gonna see? What's the director gonna see? What do they need to know about this character, right? And that's what you guys should be worried about, is what is gonna be seen, what's not gonna be seen, what's gonna play to the camera, right? Even in films and movies, right? They're gonna design to the camera, right? There's a reason. It's because you want to save yourself, because on productions, you've got a very limited scope, very limited budget, and you want to maximize the amount of work you can do for the budget that you have, right? And if you put that time into places where it's not needed, or it's going to be not seen or useless, you've wasted the studio's money, you've wasted your time, right? It's cool to know that you can do it, right? Which is why you practice doing it. But when it comes to real world work, real world settings, I would advise you, block out the entire thing, right? Block it out. Know what you're going to, what's going to be seen by the camera, right? If you're working on a shot or a scene or something, right? If you're working on even an architecture, block it out. Put a camera in your scene. What is the camera going to see? That's where I put my information. That's where I put my time. What the camera is going to see is what I care about. What the art director is going to see, that's what I care about, right? If the skull right here is going to be covered by hair, why would I spend time putting detail and shit in there? That's useless. That's a waste of information, right? Focus on what the camera's going to see. Focus on what the audience is going to see, and trust me, you will at least give yourself a chance to finish it on schedule, on time, right? Like I told you guys, money and results are key in this industry. That's what people care about. You know, like even going under like this, you know, I'm doing it for my own sake, but in production, I might be like, yo, what are we looking at? You know, what are we seeing? What am I going to see that? Okay, if I'm not seeing it, I'm not even going to touch it, right? You need to save time. You know, it's not cutting corners. You're playing to the camera. And don't, you know, because people are going, am I just cutting? You're not cutting corners. You're making sure that you're using your budget, your allocated budget appropriately. All right? You want to make sure that you are using the budget that you have, BCT. You're using the budget you have appropriately for the right things. All right? So now I can focus on these parts. I'm going to do X. I'm going to turn off my symmetry mode. And then now what I want to do now is kind of flesh out some of these skin bits. push some of these in a little bit, right? He's kind of emaciated. Trying to see what's going on. I might go to my BDS, which is my Damien standard brush, and start to cut in a little bit. Right, these vines, they're cutting into his skin. That's, it's another thing I'm imagining, like how would that affect what's going on with the skin. Right, and with this assignment, like I told you guys, it's a bust. So if you're building an entire character, you could be wasting your time, right? You want to focus on what you need to do to get the assignment through, right? And if that is, all right, this is what I've been assigned, so I do the bust, do that, right? Part of this is training you guys for studio settings, right? Following the instruction of what your art director said he wants or needs, right? If he says, I need just the bust, you give him just the bust. You don't go, all right, well, you do as directed, because there might be a reason. He might need you to jump on another project. He might need you to knock this out for a client real quick so that you can get back to your actual work, right? Or you've got a tight deadline on something. Well, if you spend all day doing one thing, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. They're going to be like, yo, what did you do? What did you do all day? Like, I asked you for this, and you spent time, So don't get caught up in the mode of like, ooh, I gotta, if you've got the job, you've got the job. Now do what they're asking you to do. And I know sometimes you're like, oh man, this could be so much better if I just did this, or if I just went and did it this way, right? Do what's asked of you, because they're the one who knows the final vision of it, right? If somebody comes to you and says, I need a stick figure, and you go and paint them, the Mona Lisa, you failed, because they didn't ask you for the Mona Lisa. They're asking you for a stick figure. So deliver a stick figure. And if they go after you deliver the stick figure, they go, ooh, maybe we could go for something more Mona Lisa-esque. You go, okay, well, you're the one paying, so I'll do you want to cater to the client. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people are told when they're in school. Is like, your job is you work for the client. You work at the behest of the client. The client is paying you money to do what they want done. They're not paying you to be an artist. They're paying you to provide a service, right? So provide the service for them. If they want something that looks like crap to you, but it's magnificent to them, do what looks magnificent to them. And when you want to do something that looks magnificent to you, go home and do your own personal project, right? That's that's one of those things that it took me a while to kind of get a hold of. Is like, a client will come and they go, I want you to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, but if I do it like this, it'll look like da-da-da-da. Or if I put this in there and if I do this and I get the Taj Mahal and I, no, I need you to do this. There's a reason for this, right? If I'm doing an architecture project for a subdivision in a household or in an area that's $200,000 to $300,000, that's the budget for the homes, and I deliver something that looks like should be in a high-end apartment or something like that, that's like $1 million home, well, they might not get that client. They might not get that project. I have now used my influence or my so-called artistic knowledge to cost this person money. And do you think they're going to want to hire me again after I just cost them money? I don't think so, right? So that's what you guys need to start thinking about. Is some of these guys, when they're asking you for something, there's a reason that they're asking you for. Maybe whoever the HOA is, or whoever the board of that program is, they're only looking for a certain level of work. They're only looking for, a certain type of project. And those are the types of projects that will get approved by those people. And if you go ahead and go, oh, I need to do this, or I need to go, just do what you're asked, do what you're told. It's not heresy, it's not blasphemy, right? All right, so let's go BS. So there's this tool called the snake hook tool, right? And this is kind of cool if you want to do stuff like this, where I'm going to try to use it to kind of build some of my vines and things like that. It's rarely useful, but oddly enough, it's going to be useful for this project. It's one of those, like, it's like Comic Sans is how I imagine it. Like, this is the Comic Sans of brushes, but oddly enough today, Comic Sans comes in handy, so I'm just going to use it to kind of build some of these thorns that he's got going on that intertwine. And I'm missing a piece. There you go. Right there. All right. And even this piece is going to need to be a little more damaged, a little more weathered. So I will do that here in a moment. But I want to kind of build some of these vines up. That's starting to look cool. And even after I do this, I'm still gonna go and kind of Z-remesh it a little bit just to give me better topology, because the snake hook tool definitely does some funkiness to the geo. It's also cool for rocks and stuff too. Oddly enough, it's useful for some like rock kind of details and things like that. Now I'm going to go into my geometry. I'm going to hit that Z remesh on that bad boy. Actually, let's do same. Z remesh it. That should give us something a little better. And then you can shift, smooth out some of these. Smooth out some of these thorns a little bit. Alright, I'm going to grab this guy a little bit, and then what I want to do is not the snake hook tool anymore. I'm just going to actually shift to smooth. BMV, let's move it a little under some of these. Just shift to smooth a little bit, making sure that it's under some of these. There we go. Now I can give it kind of some different stuff going on. There you go. Shift smooth. BCT. Just kind of use that to beat up some of these edges a little bit. I don't want to be too perfect, right? Maybe even build up a little bit on it, in these kind of middle sections a little bit. Right. BMV. There's some of these I'm going to kind of move. There you go. You might not see it in the final render, but if just in case, you never know. All right. I'm kind of towing that line. There we go. Because, you know, the image is this, right? But I might do something a little different here a bit. All right, so we've got a good, decent base for this guy. And now, let's see what else I can do. Kind of try to rip up his skin a little bit. BCT. Right. Okay. Alright, so now I might go here and start to let me see what my polygroups look like on this guy. BDS. Just gonna go to the jacket. All right. And start to add some of these features here. Remember, I've got my actual reference for a jacket as well that I'm going to be using, right? So I'll start by adding the seam in the jacket. And I'm using lazy mouse because it makes it a lot easier to draw straighter lines. So I'll suggest you do the same. making sure. And I'm probably going to eliminate the arms under anyway, so I'm okay with some of this. So like I might get rid of that, but I'll wait a little bit. What I'll do instead is right now I'm just gonna BCT, actually BCB. And I'm just using that to push back the mesh underneath. Alright, and then now that I've got something like that, I can start to BG. BDS. I'm going to start using this to draw some of these folds in here. Alright. Remember, you've got your zigzag folds. That happen whenever the arm is kind of scrunched. So I'm going to turn off symmetry for this next piece right here. All right, so So there's a bunch of different kind of things that happen whenever you're talking about fabric. You've got some spiral folds that go on around here, around the arm, around the back of the leg, things like that. You got zigzag folds, right, based on what is what's going on. All right, BCT, and then just gonna push that back a little bit. Shift to smooth, BDS. So you're looking at reference. I've given you a bunch of reference too, so you guys should should be able to knock a lot of this kind of stuff out, right? So whenever you bend your arm like this, you're gonna get something called a half lock fold. That kind of happens right there. And that's because you've got your arm bent and the fabric is creased right in the middle. So you've got this kind of bottom locking piece right here, and then this top locking piece, and then you've got boom, and then something like that. And then it'll happen on the inside as well. And then on the other side, it might like transition into a spiral fold, zigzag fold, right? So these are the kind of things that you're studying. You're using these to kind of get yourself started. And as you guys can see, I'm still using the lazy mouse, right? Because it gives me some pretty good workarounds for that. So with the arm as well, you're gonna get some folds and some pulling, some tension, right? Got broad shoulders, so you might be getting some pulling that's happening from these upper parts right here, and then it'll go into some more folds like that. Right, and then maybe with the arm you're gonna get some spiral folds, some half lock folds that go on right in here, right where the elbow meets. B, C, B, and then I can use, I've used my Damien standard, whoops, that's too much. I can use those techniques to really start to build something up, right? Right, and you might not get as much on this side, but you will still get some definite, like, some tension coming from this top, and you've got this guy as well kind of digging into it. So, and that's why I kind of turned off my symmetry a little bit too, so that I can start to right, boom, I'm gonna do maybe alt to do the opposite. All right, maybe we've got some tension there. All right. Smooth it out. And maybe you got a fistful of jacket. This claw's got a fist. You know, just kind of fistful of jacket over here. Smoothing it out. Smooth, B, DS. Damien standard. Kind of using the Damien standard a little bit. Alright, so you're just going back and forth, back and forth. Every one of these little pieces, you guys are gonna you're just, you know, it's a give and take. It doesn't all happen at once. It's not all, you know, there's no magic bullet. You just kind of work it. You work the mesh, you work your tools, you work what you got. You know, it's like you're kneading dough. Right, B, C, B, maybe even. Right. Right, I'm gonna imagine that, you know, it's going all the way around. Right. BDS, then I can use the Damien standard to really accentuate that. Right. And remember that a lot of this stuff happens all over. So let me go here. I'm gonna increase the size of my brush, BCB, and then I'm gonna use this to knock a lot of this stuff back, because eventually I'm going to get rid of it. Like eventually, and you know, in practice, when it comes to the industry, you're going to want to get rid of it. That's what you're going to be trained to do, because essentially, because you don't see it, you're essentially giving yourself way more geometry than you need. So there's a lot of geometry in here that you're using that you're not going to need, right? You might want to put it somewhere else. So like if I take it away from here, I can put it towards a weapon. I can put it towards shoes. I can put, you know, you're reallocating geometry. You're taking it from one place and you're putting it in another place, right? So a lot of meshes that you'll see are super hollow, right? Clothing makes one piece, and then to save geometry, to save them some space and you know, polys, you'll you know, remove a lot of this inner piece. You'll try to cut as close to here as possible, remove everything till you get to the wrist, hands, and then you'll see that, you know, even the jacket hand or whatever it is almost welded to the wrist. All right. It's almost getting to that time, so let me kind of do a little bit more of this drapery, and then I'll let you guys go. All right. And right now, does anybody have any questions for me? Comments, concerns? Okay. By now, you guys should have picked your sculpt that you're going to work on. And I should have approved it. And you guys should be well on your way to doing something productive with the rest of your time here. Right, it's going to take some time to build this up too, so, you know, it's one of those things. You're just pushing, you're pulling. Shift smooth. And then you're going to start building up that silhouette of it. Just going to increase this size a little bit. Let me solo this so you guys can see what it looks like underneath. Just so you guys can see how crazy it looks underneath. Alright, I don't really care about any of this, so it can look as jagged and nonsensical as it needs to. Alright? Because this is not our focus. We don't really care about what's going on underneath here. What we care about is the outcome of our jacket, because that's going to cover all of this up. Alright, so I'm just going through, just making this look as dilapidated as, you know, if we ever make a zombie version of him, maybe we can use this as his zombie hand. But until then, let's get rid of as much of this mass as we possibly can. Alright. It doesn't even need to be smooth or anything. I'm being extra. Alright. So now I'll take off solo. So now whenever I do anything, it's not gonna, we're not gonna get all that Z fighting going on. So. And we still got some anyway. Yeah, so. With something like this, right? Once I get to a certain stage, I can go to my deformation and then polish it up a little bit. Right? Now it looks a little more natural. And then I'm going back and following those principles of the Z fold. Right, the zigzag fold, the half lock. Right. So next class we will kind of start to refine these pieces of the mesh and try to keep it moving on this guy. We've got a couple more days left of really ironing out a lot of these, and then we'll be able to do some final detail stuff like hair, and I'll show you guys how to paint the skin and render it and things like that. So yeah, we've got a little bit to go, but we will surely finish this before the end of the semester. This isn't one of those classes where you get a project that you're supposed to finish in another class or something like that. I'm not a fan of that. I like to do things that can be finished in this class, this semester, and keep it moving. You know, you guys get the information, you know what you really need to do, and then you go. And a lot of this, you know, I kind of knock back to them, just because we weren't really being judicious when we first created it. We were kind of ham-fisted with a lot of this stuff. So and there are new BC, so there are new kind of like cloth cloth tools that exist inside of here that you can start to use, but you know, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. So maybe you turn it down a little bit. Yeah, I don't know about that. There you go. It'll work here, you know. And the thing is, you have to keep in mind what kind of fabric you're dealing with too. So not all fabrics are going to react the same, you know? So you got to be really careful with brushes like this that kind of do a general, you know, because sometimes, what if you're dealing with like burlap or, you know, a stiffer kind of clothing material? Then you know, you might be replicating something or making it look like something that isn't the type of material, and that can get you in more trouble than it's worth. So just be careful with stuff like that. So that's the B. You just go B, C, and then you got all kind of cloth folds and different things like that. You know, you guys can test these out and see what they do. I kind of just turn this into jello. So it might be good for like, yeah, I don't know if it's good for that either. Alright, you see how wrinkled everything looks? It just doesn't make any sense, you know. That's the problem with some of these brushes, is you got to make it make sense. Make it make sense. So I always kind of preach using your own skills to create it instead of letting kind of AI or letting the computer generate those things. This is a nudge. The nudge might not be bad. You see, maybe, you know, you just want to use it subtly, I guess. It would be my only caveat to something like this, is subtle. Make it super subtle and you'll be fine. Right? So another thing I might want to do before I keep going too far down this cloth sim rabbit hole is add some buttons, right? Add some buttons to it and then use that to All right, well, that's gonna be it for class today. We detailed our character a little more. We built up the his little weapon dealio. Polish this guy a little bit. Right. And yeah, next class we will continue detailing this guy until we're kind of done with him, and then move on from there. Let me go up here, geometry, increase our subdivision. You guys can see what we did. All right, guys. Thank you guys again for stopping by. I really do appreciate you. I will see you guys Thursday. Alrighty.